Shining bright lotus. Welcome, everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to sit together and practice on this Saturday. It's interesting. We're in the middle of Rohatsu for many practitioners. Rohatsu traditionally in the Zen tradition is a sesshin. And of course, just in the monk tradition, the Rinzai being a monastery tradition, you'd have a 90-day or 100-day ango, which was the practice periods where you were have intense focus, and then you'd have a sesshin within the 90-day ango. So there's lots and lots of folks who are sitting in silence for long periods of time. Usually, traditionally, in the modern version of Rinzai, it's 8 days. We, as householders, we're going to honor Rohatsu tomorrow night, which is with an all-night sit. So you're invited to that. I hope you just come to whatever portion that you can feel comfortable with. It starts in the afternoon. But the context for Rohatsu is really important, which is that it's in this dark time of the year. And it's no surprise that it ends up being in the Western Gregorian calendar and during December. Interestingly, it ended up on December 8th when the Japanese switched to the Gregorian or the Christian calendar. But previously it'd be the 12th month, the 8th day of the 12th month, which on a lunar calendar, which is what the Chinese still use and the Japanese were using a long time ago, would put it sometime out in the middle of late January, but we've landed in December, and it fits what many religions have these rituals in the middle of December because it's the darkest time of the year, and then we're really celebrating the birth of the light, which is why I called my Dharma talk "The Birth of the Light." Formally, it's the honoring Shakyamuni's Buddha awakening, his evening of awakening, and so it's often the practice is to do a all-night sit of some sort, and it tends to not have there's not a lot of teaching and activity. It really is we patiently sit in honor of this our founder who sat, and of course some stories say he sat for 40 days before this night. So he wasn't just sitting for one night. And of course, there was the 6 years where he was searching before that, before he got to the 40 days, before he got to the night where his awakening happened. For me, it's an interesting, like what I'm going to look at today is well, what if this is all a bunch of male stories, well, all a bunch of guys, and of course, it's the birth of a faith of some sort. We conveniently in the West as convert Buddhists have this story that Buddhism isn't a faith because it doesn't believe in God, but that's just the story that we're telling ourselves, because for many Buddhists who are raised in a Buddhist worldview, which is many Asian countries, it is a faith of some sort. It's a belief system. It's a birth. And if it's a birth, that means there must be some kind of feminine quality to this particular story. And I've been really looking closely at feminine stories. They're not so hard to find if you look in the 21st century. But you would think if you were in a Rinzai monastery, that they don't really exist. And of course, interestingly, in Hollow Bone Zen, which is the origins of my particular practice, also in a lot of ways was born in a masculine setting, which came out of Mankind Project. And it actually took a while before the women, who are now, there are many women leaders in Hollow Bone Zen, to sort of be allowed to participate. But the original, if you ever want to see some photos of the original Hollow Bones, they were all a bunch of guys with shaved heads and blue robes. That's not true anymore. And in a cosmopolitan Zen, which is what we practice here at Shining Bright Lotus, we'd like to believe that we are gender fluid, and we honor gender, male and female, but we recognize that all beings are welcome here. And if we follow the belief system and the theory of Buddhism, we recognize that gender is not something to be turned into a weapon or a culture that's unhealthy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of interesting stories, which is going to lead up to me being able to share with you a wonderful version of the Heart Sutra, the Prajnaparamita, written as a feminine version, and which is fabulous. At least I think it's fabulous, so I hope you find it fabulous as well. But before that, we want to look at a particular, two stories. They're kind of it started out with this particular story. Whoops, let me get Ling Zhao's Shining Grasses, okay? And so, but this ended up being a whole family story, because Ling Zhao is Layman Pang, who's a pretty reasonably famous person's daughter. Okay, so this turned out to just be a fun bunch of stories. So this is a koan, and it's a pretty straightforward koan. That's where I'm going to start. So Layman Pang was sitting in his thatched cottage one day studying the sutras. "Difficult, difficult, difficult," he suddenly exclaimed. "Like trying to store 10 bushels of sesame seed in the top of a tree." "Easy, easy, easy," his wife, Layman Pang answered. "It's like touching your feet to the floor when you get out of bed." "Neither difficult nor easy," said their daughter, Ling Zhao. "It's like the teachings of the ancestors shining on the 100 grass tips." So that's where we start. That's where we started. And it's just such a lovely, I mean, how many of these koans just have a whole family in it? Right? So let's just pick this apart, not too much, but just to pick apart. First of all, Layman Pang. Who's Layman Pang? Layman Pang is a pretty important character, and you didn't even know it, but hopefully you'll leave today, because most of the Chinese patriarchs, the Chinese lineage from which we trace ourselves through, there's 6 patriarchs from Bodhidharma all the way to Huineng, and then we start to move into the 5 houses, and they're all basically monks. Right? So the monks just have name, Linchi, Yishuan, and Baijan, and Shintao. But Layman Pang has the name Layman Pang because he's not a monk. So within all those 3 centuries, there's very few people who are laymen, and he's a pretty successful guy. I won't give you his whole story, but he studied with Mazu and he studied with Shitao. But he actually, one of his famous stories is this little poem. It goes like this: "Daily, nothing particular, only nodding to myself. Nothing to choose, nothing to discard. No coming, no going, no person in purple. Blue mountains without a speck of dust. I exercise occult and subtle powers, carrying water, shouldering firewood." I'm going to say that last line again. Carrying water, shouldering firewood. That turned into hauling water, carrying wood. Ever hear that? Chop water, chop wood, carry water. Well, that's Layman Pang, who basically said that, right? And that's a pretty famous Zen thing. Chop wood, carry water, chop wood. Okay, that's the simple practice. So he's made it into modern times. Well, it turns out that, he liked to study. And so he brings to this particular story, he's a sutra reader. He was really devoted to sutra reading. And so this story, he says, difficult, difficult, difficult. And then like my family, it's not uncommon for the feminine to turn around and kind of say the opposite. So what does his wife say? His wife says, easy, easy, easy. And of course, I love this. It's like touching your feet to the floor when you get out of bed. It's like, okay, so she does yoga. I bet he doesn't have that. It's not so easy for him to touch his toes when he gets out of bed. Okay, right? So there's something wonderful about, yeah, it's easy. It's like bending forward and touching the ground, right? And you can see him rolling his eyes. It's like, yeah, that's easy for you to say. But there's that somatic quality of the feminine showing up. And of course, the daughter, who is the character I'm interested in, Ling Zhao, she says, neither this, neither that. Neither one of you. Interestingly, she's the problem solving of these parents. Can you imagine having parents who are Buddhist scholars? I guess you should talk to our kids because, Hakui's in this as well. And so she says, neither difficult nor easy. That's the middle way. Right? That's a very Shakyamuni Buddhist idea. Neither difficult nor easy. It's like, what are you guys talking about? It's like the teachings of the ancestors, right? Shining on 100 grass tips. And that's one of the themes that you see in a lot of the female literature, which is this, not just the female literature, but this idea of nature is our teacher. The wisdom of the grass tips shining in the sun, just being themselves. Just being themselves. So it's like, yeah, you can study your sutras, Dad, but, how about just showing up? Okay, and of course, and Mom, you can argue with Dad and do yoga, but, you two are always going back and forth, and the fact is it's all right here, right now. Right? That's a simple interpretation of this particular story, right? We can unpack it, but I want to put it in the context of a bigger set of stories. But it's a lovely, simple, feminine story, right? Because it just turns out there's women's stories around there. We don't have to rely on getting hit by a stick. I found lots of hit by stick. If you want to get hit by a stick stories, then go look at Hakuin and Lin Chi, lots of stick hitting, and so for one of the things that, and you heard it in my instructions this morning, when you're practicing, you want to allow yourself to relax. It doesn't need to be so effortful. You set yourself up and then you relax and trust. The Dharmakaya is here. It's all here all the time. So it's just a matter of allowing it into your life. Okay, so we concentrate ourselves to clear and to cleanse, to silence all the busyness, and then we relax into the ever-present living divine mystery. Lin Zhao's in another story. And so this one gets a little personal, and this is what I'm gonna ask us to we're gonna have a chance to we do small groups after this Dharma talk. For me, the celebration of the light comes in December because in my family there many of the deaths that I celebrate the loss in December. It seems like my family checks out in December. So today's December 6th, and so I'm celebrating the yard side of the passing away of my brother. That happened actually quite a bit of time ago. And so with birth, death and birth are not different from one another. Part of the idea of the birth of the light is that we're leaving something behind. It's a cycle. They're not separate. So when the Buddha awakens, he is leaving his traditional relative self to be awakened. And at the same time, there's something that he is including, the middle way. It's not that it's just different, it's that there's cycles of life. So if we're celebrating this light, we're also celebrating death. And we're recognizing that's all part of the story. So interestingly, there's another piece about this woman, Ling Zhao, called Ling Zhao Goes First, okay? But I guess I should just give you just a quick history of, so Layman Pang basically, travels around and, he ends up traveling with his daughter because she's a pretty awakened character, right? And they're just a fabulous family story about, they walked, they rested, they walked, years went by, right? It was a challenging time, right? And so, in a way, she was like his sidekick, right? And so in 806, Ling Zhao was 43 years old, and her father, an old man, returned to the region where they had been born, settled in a cave several miles from the Deer Gate Monastery. Every month, Ling Zhao walked 19 miles to and from the city to sell utensils and buy food. One summer in 808, that's 2 years later, Pang announced, that's the dad, as he always announced things all at once, he announced it was time for him to pass away. He's done. And, there's a tradition for awakened Zen masters to predict their time of death. In the Japanese culture, they write death poetry. That wasn't true in the death poems, but in the Chinese, in Chinese, that wasn't true. But that was part of if you are awake, then you know when your time's done. Okay, so he announces, I'm ready to die. And so here comes the next koan story. Okay, and some of you might have heard this one because we did this story on a Tuesday night community practice. This is Ling Zhao Goes First. When it came time for Layman Pang to die, he said to his daughter Ling Zhao, "Go look at the sun and tell me when it's exactly noon." Ling Zhao went to the door and looked out, saying, "The sun has reached its zenith, but there's an eclipse." When Layman Pang stepped outside to see the remarkable event, Ling Zhao sat down in her father's seat, put her palms together, and passed away. Layman Pang looked in from the doorway, smiled, and said, "My daughter has gone ahead of me once more." He waited 7 days and then he passed away himself. So perhaps this is a sad story because it's about dying, but it's certainly a very powerful story about an awakened woman who was dedicated to her family, very Confucian. If anybody following Chinese, she dedicated her life to her taking care of her parents, and she was awake enough that when her father was complete, she was awake enough to be able to complete her life at that particular moment. And her father saw that as a proud dad, interestingly enough. So it's just an interest to me. It's like a whole different style of Buddhist story that learning about if you go look at the Buddhist stories about women. So to me, we're celebrating the birth of the light, and so we're celebrating birth as part of this holiday season. And so with that, I am going to offer, and I'll probably put it in writing and post it somewhere, this version of the Prajnaparamita, which we all chanted for. We chanted earlier today, and I'm going to read it slowly because I think you'll enjoy this, or I'm going to enjoy reading it to you, so hopefully you'll enjoy it too. She lies down calmly and gives birth to perfect wisdom. In that moment of release, all women are the same woman. All babies are the same baby. A mother reaches for her child without regard to its individual nature, and any wish she might have had about its form vanishes. The baby is perfect just as it is. Prajnaparamita gives birth to all beings and all things with equal love, seeing the unique perfection of each one. She gives birth to Mahayana Buddhism, to Nagarjuna, and to Zen, to Bodhidharma and Dogen, to Aryavdeva and Tsongkhapa, and to you and me. Vast and deep and endless, a single brief sound. She is short and long, fine and broad, a matrix, a womb, a nest, a web, a loom, a vessel, the ocean, the seed. She is everything the baby needs. Prajnaparamita comforts, guides, encourages us to explore. Like all good parents, she reveals and explains things when the child asks, and only as far as the child can understand. She waits patiently, never tired, never afraid, fierce and protective, but not indulgent. She doesn't spare us mistakes. We are transparent to her. She will always precede us. Prajnaparamita gives us doubt, that great gift. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Disappearing into no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, and no mind. Then no disappears, and there is only yes. Birth and death disappear until there is only life. Pursuit and hunger disappearing until there is nothing to pursue, no need. Until there is no I, no you, no path, no end to the path, no beginning. With such great doubt, we can awaken to possibility. She shows us space without obstacles. She shows us how to live in objectless totality, with intimacy so close there is no gap. She is the Tathagata Garbha, the womb, the great mother of all the Buddhas, including you, including me. She sings a lullaby to help us rest, words beyond words. Gate, gate, pada gate, padasan gate, bodhi swaha. Going, going, always going beyond, always becoming, always being, always birthing and living, born Buddha. Thank you. Shining bright lotus.